Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, I welcome back Microsoft MVP Erik Hougaard. Erik has been busy in the last few months creating a range of new videos about development and techniques and skills for Dynamics 365 Business Central using the AL language. We sit down to talk about a few of his recent videos, including a look back at an early version of NAV where Erik analyzes how much things have changed and how much of today's Business Central offering still resembles that old financial management solution from 1990. Is it a drawback that many of the principles of application design still apply 30 years later, as he demonstrates in his video? And why has development and customization remained such a big part of NAV and BC experience over the years? It has just shaped the product, but it's also shaped the community around it. We also discuss some of the trends around producing video, how the Business Central market seems to be doing from Erik's perspective, and a look at some of the features that he has been examining and techniques that he's been examining in his videos. Well, hi, Erik. Welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you on again.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
You've been doing some pretty interesting video production recently, and I thought we could maybe just start by probably the most recent thing you did, and it can maybe help put into context what all of your recent work has been about. It's something I have actually never seen before, which was a sort of comparative or critical demo of what Navision 3.56 looks like and tying it to the modern day. Am I summarizing correctly sort of your thinking around this new video you created?
Well, that's pretty accurate. So Navision 3.56 was the latest version of the character-based Navision product before we moved to the Windows version. And but this version was interesting because it came in 1990. So actually, almost to the date, August 1990 was the release date of this version, and it was the first version with the programming language. At that point, actually, it was called AL, and now we call it AL again, which is quite funny. But it was the first version of Navision where we could do the development stuff that we are still doing today. It was the version that really built the foundation for everything we do today on Business Central, and we're doing on Dynamics NAV. And I happened to start my career working on that version right out of high school. At that point, it was actually an IBM product, and my first job was basically integrating this new ERP system with another Pascal-based product that IBM had for doing point-of-sale system. So I got into this 30 years ago and worked a lot with this software, and it is really the grandfather of what we're doing today. And I thought it would be cool to try to do a thorough video on showing all the features and showing how it was built and what made it cool. So it was kind of a video I had been wanted to do for a long time, ever since I started this new video adventure thing.
Yeah, and I should add that you really have been producing quite a string of videos in the last couple months, I would say. Was there something that kind of sparked your interest in really kind of amping up your video production?
Well, I guess COVID gets blamed for a lot of stuff. And one thing I sort of realized way back then, basically what happened just around the time when COVID really hit, was that we were supposed to have the MVP summit in Seattle, and that got canceled, of course, and also that was a good call. And it got me thinking. Okay, so all the stuff that we normally do in the channel at conferences and so on, this thing is going to impact everything. So this might be a good time to try to do something else. And I've always enjoyed, on conferences and workshops and stuff like that, working through something with an audience. I'm also a musician, so old circus horses and all that stuff. But so working through a problem with an audience is kind of a fun process. So I thought, okay, let me try to see if I can put that into a video format that makes sense without having to spend tons of time on video editing, because I don't enjoy that. So I started this YouTube channel, and I think I have created a usable concept, and a lot of people seems to agree that they like the concept I'm producing. So right now it's all over the place in when it comes to the kind of content, but that's kind of on purpose. So I got some different series where I'm working on some apps and some other one shot video on a specific topic, just because that was interesting. I think there's a video coming later this week on how to select a value from an enum, and the reason for that was because suddenly I was sitting in a situation where I needed to do this for a customer, and the old way of doing it would actually not be correct according to the whole concept of extension and extendability. So I thought there needs to be a better solution, and I found the solution. I thought I'll do a video on this. So that's kind of how I see this thing. So it's all over the place, but the idea is that everything should be this sounds grand, but everything should be a teachable moment, so to speak. So you should be able to learn something, hopefully.
You're definitely assembling a bit of a library of sort of your explorations of developing, I guess, with AL, and it seems like most of, well, I guess you've titled it sort of a Business Central AL series, more or less, right? So it all includes, for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, a lot of coding and talking as you code, which is very impressive. Watching you sort of put lines of code together and talking through it. And I guess, maybe to an extent, as you said that, it made me think, okay, well, something like a blast from the past, looking through old sort of text-based interface of Navision 3.56. It seems like you're always a little bit thinking about sort of where you've come from and how things are, even though you're focused on the latest in basically all the other videos, right? You sort of have a mind on sort of how things have changed.
Well, our entire industry is going through a lot of changes. The on-prem to the cloud transition and all the related changes in the technology stacks. In case of Business Central, the shift to extensions and all this, but so you got to put it into context, and I hopefully I'm always trying to put it into context. There are a few of the videos that are more just for fun. I have another blast from the past video coming up soon about the first, as far as I know, kind of viral piece of code that was created for financials. As that was back in 96, as financials was brand new. I was at a class at Navision at that time, not Microsoft, but at Navision. They were teaching us the new development system, and the teacher said, okay, so we even tried to recreate Minesweeper, the old Windows game that was on all Windows platforms, but that proved too hard to do. And I was sitting down at this class and said, challenge accepted, right? So instead of doing all the stuff that I should have done in that class, I spent the rest of the day trying to build Minesweeper, which I did, and that object then ended up at I don't know how many customers, because it would just copy it, and then there was a secret click where you could click and then you would get the game. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the game. So again, in the blast from the past kind of perspective, show those things that we did on the earlier versions, just because it's actually a good story.
That's really interesting. Sort of you sort of had an Easter egg that sort of circulated through lots of NAV, or I guess Navision Financials systems back then.
And you're just on the point with circulated, because if you remember the old logo for financials, it was this blue square with a green dot in the middle, and that was shown at the main menu when the main menu was first shown. And what we did was that if you clicked on the green dot, you'll get the game. That was the only way to get the game.
That's funny. Well, on the other side of it, I thought it was cool to see, and I can certainly kind of understand how you'd want to put these things in context. One thing I was thinking as I watched you run through some of the features and even the reasoning and what users really wanted from the system to an extent, in your sort of demo there, I guess you'd say, or walkthrough, was the fact that so much of it seems to still have kind of carried forward in without too much evolution of sort of some of the behaviors. I know obviously the interfaces are obviously completely different and stuff, but I mean, a lot is the same. It seemed to be what you were saying. Some is obviously very different, but I mean, what do you take from that things that are in Business Central today operate in much the same way that they did in this old version?
No, but you know what? If I created something that would work and still be usable 30 years later, I'll just be thrilled. That the fact that these guys were able to just create something that was so good, so well executed, so well thought out, that most of it still lives 30 years later through, I don't know how many generations of technologies we have passed since then, but and that's just, I'm humbled at the fact that they were able to do this, and it's a testament to how good of a product we actually have. That you can look at this version from 30 years ago and recognize all the major components we have today and the major way of how everything works today. They just got it right, and I've been saying a lot over the time that I think what they, apart from all the tech stuff, so what they also did was that they got the amount of functionality just right. The features you have were just right. So you could basically take the exact same feature set today, and the only thing you would add was a bank interface, because at that time, no banks had any online things that would do anything. So there were no banking at the time. But if you added some banking interface, this product would basically still fit 9 out of 10 small medium businesses, because the feature set was just right.
I was looking through and I've looked at a few of the other videos. I haven't made it through all of them. Are there any that to you have either surprised you in terms of people's reaction, or surprised you just in terms of things that you think we're going to see a lot more of from customers taking advantage of some of the techniques or some of the capabilities that you've already dealt with?
So I think the one of the two main takeaways a lot of people take from the stuff that I do. One is the simple fact that, just looking at how I operate, Visual Studio Code, and that's why I try to, play by play commenting while writing the code, because I think that's helpful in understanding why I'm doing things. So that just helping people figure out what's actually the process when you're dealing with this, because the system does not really hold you by the hand as it used to. So you got the blank screen, and then you need to put some code in there, and that's much harder than having something where you just need to fill out a couple of fields and then you're off to the races. So that's one thing I've seen that people really enjoy. And when I post a video where I have just so there's too much code, I cannot type it all in a reasonable time. So I do that on beforehand, and then I do get comments saying, we prefer you actually type it. So that's one thing. The other thing that is interesting, that because the whole the client UI have changed from being within the very closed Dynamics NAV client, Windows client, to just being a web client, then that we now have a very functional interface to the world of JavaScript. It seems that most of my JavaScript oriented videos are very popular, and I think a lot of developers coming from the NAV world, where that was never a required skill, suddenly we are out we're in this open world where we can use all these other things that people enjoy that, as far as I can see. But I also think one thing that's because and hopefully most of the listeners know that I've been blogging about Business Central and NAV development for years and years. But I do meet a lot of new people, and looking at I have a teenage daughter, and the way she seek information, blogs are not necessarily the first place she goes. Sometimes a video the video seems to be more preferred over reading just an old-fashioned blog post. So I think from the MVP side of this, we're actually reaching people that were harder to reach just with a blog.
That I could definitely see that. Getting back to sort of the JavaScript aspect, is that a trend? Do you expect to see more of the? Well, two things. So first, do you expect to see sort of more work being done with JavaScript, frameworks or approaches to development? And also, just kind of curious, is that something that you're doing more of in your sort of day-to-day work, or what else are you doing in your day-to-day work?
Yes, to all of the above. But so we have several apps on AppSource, and every single app has custom JavaScript in it. So we use it to format things in a different way that Microsoft would format it. We use it to just to handle interaction with the users in slightly different ways. And I think we'll see more and more of this because now that the problem earlier was that we had all these different clients and we have to treat all of them differently, and it was just complicated. But now we just have one client, and it's really powerful. So one of the videos I did recently was the what you see is what you get editor, which was actually a JavaScript control I created a couple of years ago or something like that for Business Central, but just did a video on how to incorporate it into and create a detailed item description, and that got a lot of traction also. So people seem to enjoy that.
And like you were saying, I guess you're able to find sort of more needs for for that. And I know I've asked you this question before, but when it comes to what Business Central customers need to go live, sort of what percentage of them are still requiring either custom extensions or, I don't know, other kinds of customization? I guess that's really the only kind now that companies should be investing in, right? But how many companies do you see that really need that, as opposed to just putting together a few, off-the-shelf solutions and going live that way?
So nobody's going live with pure Business Central. That there's probably one or two somewhere, but I don't know of anyone going live with pure out of the box Microsoft Business Central. Most of them go live with that plus and I'm going to say a handful, but and that's perhaps not statistically true, but a handful of extensions from AppSource. Typically, they need extensions to handle banking, because what you get out of the box from Microsoft on banking is, how to put this nicely, is insufficient. Basically, the banking interface in Business Central as of today is more or less the same as we had in NAV. And compared to what the competitors are doing, that's just not good enough. So you need to get some, and there are lots of great apps in AppSource for handling banking. So from that aspect, it's not a problem, but you need to go to AppSource. We also actually have a banking app in AppSource, but it's necessary. And then you still do customizations for the small instances. It might just be a report or two, or mostly, I think actually what we're doing is typically data conversion stuff. That's apart from the occasional report or two, then data conversion. Getting bulk data into Business Central is still a challenge. We have the config packages, and they are great to a certain level, but they're really not great when dealing with transactions. Actually, mostly unusable for transactions if you introduce dimensions and stuff. And we don't have access to the SQL database, so bulk imports tend to be custom code of some sort.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you, just for your viewpoint on something that seems to be somewhat of a debate out there right now, and it gets into custom extensions and I guess DevOps more broadly. When it comes to writing extensions and delivering them to a customer, there is that ongoing, testing, regression testing, checking on updates that Microsoft pushes to Business Central twice a year, right? Where do you fall on that debate in terms of how much work customers should expect to have their partner do versus Microsoft's responsibility? Are you up on that debate?
So the problem is that there's not a single answer to that. If we look at smaller customers, the margin a partner gets from selling the license is really not enough to cover any sort of services like, okay, we got the next version, let's run the test suite on all your customizations or the few you have, without customers paying for that, and most customers do not want to pay for that. So from that aspect, if there is a ball, it's sitting directly in Microsoft's court. When it comes to bigger installations, it's a natural part of the development process. I have tried to hold the whole concept of DevOps out of my channel right now to kind of show that it don't have to be that complicated, because DevOps quickly gets complicated, and there's a lot of setting up and maintaining the structures, which is not really video friendly. But in the real world, for big projects, yeah, of course we need it.
Like any other application, I guess what you're saying is, you have to expect that there's going to be some degree of that as a solution owner, you're going to have to maybe just take ownership of, along with the rest of the deployment.
Yeah, but it's interesting. So one of the things I'm dealing with right now is just the difference in the different country versions. So most of us know that there's like a W1 version, the worldwide version of Business Central. But the interesting bit is that what's in there is not necessary in all of the country versions. So the country versions are very diverse. And getting an app to work on all country versions are just a challenge. So right now I'm dealing with some strange things that happens in the New Zealand version. We have an app called the Advanced Intercompany Functionality, which is an app that kind of fills out the missing holes, not a missing hole, but the holes in intercompany functionality out of the box, and try to cover all that. And then suddenly strange error messages pop up in the New Zealand version, and then it turns out that the New Zealand version is quite different on the whole way that they have made tons of changes to the base finance module, and just getting the intercompany, which is supposedly a portable file format and stuff like that, to work everywhere. There's a lot of work involved, a lot of testing on a lot of versions.
That's interesting. I thought on the whole, Microsoft was actually taking some steps to kind of improve the way it deploys its various localizations and or different country versions of Business Central. But I guess there's still ways that you can run into issues, huh?
There are still the country versions are. I'm not sure I understand it, and hopefully somebody from Microsoft can explain at some point. But like a module like the account schedule exists in two different versions across two different groups of countries. It does not seem that the changes are as a result of local requirements. It just seems that they are somehow different in the implementation, which makes it harder for app developers to use them across localizations.
Yeah, it's like one more level of testing and verification you have to do to release it to each locale.
Yeah, and right now AppSource does not support that you have different apps for different, so that you have the same app but in different versions for different localizations. So then you have to have two apps in AppSource. And, Anyway, that's there's room for improvement there.
Sure. All right. Well, just more generally, it sounds like you're working with various kinds of companies. How do you see your Business Central customers doing these days with in the midst of the pandemic? Are different outcomes, different concerns?
Well, first of all, we're up here in British Columbia, Canada, and our pandemic response has been very, very good. So in general, BC is doing very, very fine, and it's mostly business as usual. Well, I'm sitting from home. I've been working from home since March, but it's more or less business as usual. for us. There's been a bit of some customers have shuffled around and said, well, we need to see how this is going, and then they postponed the project 2 months and started the project, and other new project has come out of the blue because, hey, we got time right now to do something. So it's business is fine up here.
It's funny. For me, when I talk to different people in different places, different maybe that work with different products, I hear it's such a range of observations. I've heard quite a few people who report something similar to what you're saying, that a lot of businesses seem to be moving forward sort of unaffected. Others say it's a really mixed bag, that a large portion are really struggling of their customers, and then others are moving ahead sort of unimpeded. And then, others have more of a pessimistic outlook. I guess it really does depend on, it's just a combination of factors of how it's touching either their own business or their clients. So I'm glad to hear that. Well, I think thanks for sort of pointing out this series that you're doing. I think it's something that anyone who's interested in the direction that Business Central has taken, it gives you really, even if you're not a developer, I would say, you might not absorb all of it, but it gives you a sense of sort of all the possibilities that are in Business Central as a platform, and what it allows developers to do still. And because that's much more so to me than some of the other solutions in the Dynamics suite. I mean, Business Central really is, and now before it, I mean, it really feels like developers kind of push this thing forward to such a large extent. A lot of the debate is by developers. A lot of the sort of enthusiasm seems to come from the more technical elements of the community. But that's not all. Yeah.
And that was basically going back to the video we talked about at the beginning. That's because that's the way it has been for 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the subtle things that I thought I picked up on, you can tell me if I kind of got this right, was, you were switching between some sort of customization and the interface kind of very quickly. You were sort of jumping over to writing bits of code and then jumping right back into the interface at different times. And is that sort of how it was flowing? Either setting variables or other things?
Because it was so everything was within the same executable. It was not until we got the role-tailored client that you no longer did the development in the client that ran the program. So in financials, in classic client, you did the development in the client that ran it. So it was all integrated. And I think the fact that you could, within 10 seconds, you could go in and add a field to a screen, and then it's there and all users can see it. That capability in 1990 was just unheard of. The way I used to describe it in the old days, that Navision and NAV, Dynamics and all of it, the true power is not what it's doing right now, but what you can get it to do. And if you look across the entire world of installations, you will, from the way I look at it and how I count, I may not see everything, but there's a lot of odd is perhaps the wrong word, but odd companies, meaning that they do something slightly different, so they do not fit into a standard software package, and lots of them ends up on our platform simply because of the possibilities to customize it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I guess the point I would make is, even if you're not the person doing the development, it's really worthwhile to see, I think, as many of these examples as you can of where the product can be taken. Where it's meant to, it's sort of designed to be taken. Whether you're a business development person or pre-sales or even a project manager, I think it's worth at least understanding what some of the capacity is.
Yeah, and I would say that already at this point, even though I started in the middle of May with this, several of the videos are direct responses to requests from people saying, "Hey, could you do a video on something?" And I think that's the way it's supposed to be when you're doing stuff like that. It has to be there has to be some sort of communication. So if people have subjects that say, "Hey, how about doing a video on? I would love to see something," then suggest it to me on Twitter or in the comments or I read everything because I really want to show the stuff that people want to see.
We'll put a link to your YouTube channel. Obviously, what's your Twitter handle?
Erik Hougaard.
Okay. Yeah, we'll link to that too. And as I look forward to seeing what you have next. Sounds like you have at least a few more directly planned at this point. And you think you'll keep this going for a while?
Well, every time I cross up a subject on my videos to-do list, it seems to grow larger. So I'm not running out of content for a long time. I may at some point reduce the cadence to. Right now I try to do at least 2 videos a week, just to get some sort of critical mass to the channel. But probably at some point I will go down to 1 video a week. But I've also for just for training to learn how to do this. It's good to just keep the cadence up, and it's also when you go to a YouTube channel and you find one video that's interesting, if there's a lot of other videos, you could probably find something else that's also interesting. So how credible a channel is also slightly related to how much content there is, right?
Yeah, the mysteries of the YouTube algorithm, right? But I think I think it seems like it's getting strong responses. I saw great comments on a couple of them, so I look forward to more. Well, Erik, thank you so much for coming on. It's always fun to chat.
Sure, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Erik Hougaard for joining me today. Definitely check out his YouTube channel for all of his latest videos. He really has created quite a library of them over the last few months. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can check us out on Twitter @msdynamicsworld. And thanks for listening. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.